Do this every morning after 50 to help burn visceral fat and wake up your gut after 50. Most people who start gaining belly fat are told the same thing. Eat less, cut dessert, skip breakfast, try fasting. And if their digestion feels slower too, more bloating, more heaviness, less regularity, they are told that is just age. Your metabolism is slower now. Your gut is slower now. Your body is different now. End of story. That sounds reasonable until you look at one detail most people completely miss. Your body after 50 does not just respond to what you eat, it responds very strongly to what you do in the first hour after you eat, and one of the simplest things you can do in that window is not a supplement, not a powder, not a detox protocol. It is a walk, a real walk, short enough to actually do, structured enough to matter, and timed in a way that changes what your body does with breakfast instead of just what breakfast does to you. Studies show that walking or other light exercise soon after a meal blunts post-meal glucose excursions, and recent work found even a 10-minute walk immediately after a meal reduced peak glucose. So here is the practical takeaway up front. If you want one morning habit after 50 that actually makes physiological sense for both visceral fat risk and sluggish digestion, the best candidate is a 10-20-minute brisk walk after breakfast. Not because one walk melts belly fat. It does not. And not because it fixes every gut issue. It will not. But because it hits three systems at once: glucose handling, movement-driven energy use, and gut motility. That combination is exactly why this habit is more powerful than it looks. I am going to walk you through four things. First, why visceral fat behaves differently after 50, and why movement timing matters more than people think. Second, why a post-breakfast walk changes the glucose and insulin story in a way that matters for abdominal fat. Third, why morning is one of the best times to wake up the gut in the first place. And fourth, what to avoid if you want this habit to actually work instead of becoming another thing you quit after 5 days. Let's start with the fat side, because when people say belly fat, they usually mean what they can pinch. But the fat that concerns clinicians most is visceral adipose tissue, the fat stored deeper around abdominal organs. It tends to increase with age and is more strongly linked to cardiometabolic risk than general obesity alone. That is one reason exercise and body composition changes matter more after 50, not less. In older adults with obesity, randomized trials have shown that exercise-based interventions can reduce visceral adipose tissue, especially when aerobic work is included, and even more when aerobic and resistance training are combined during weight loss. Now, I want to be very precise here. A short walk after breakfast does not burn off breakfast in some cartoonish one-to-one way. That is not how this works. The real value of the walk is that it interrupts the most damaging version of the breakfast response. Eat, spike, sit. When you sit after a meal, blood glucose rises, insulin rises, and the body has to manage that surge passively. When you walk, muscle contractions create an alternate destination for circulating glucose. That means less of a spike, less insulin demand, and a very different metabolic tone for the next few hours. Systematic reviews show post-meal exercise, including walking, has an acute beneficial effect on postprandial hyperglycemia when started as soon as possible after eating. And that matters because visceral fat is not just a calorie storage issue. It is tightly tied to insulin resistance, poor glucose control, and the cumulative effects of metabolic overflow over time. The more efficiently your body handles meals, the better the long-term environment for reducing central fat risk. That does not mean a breakfast walk alone erases visceral fat. It means it attacks one of the pathways that keeps visceral fat metabolically relevant in the first place. In older adults, reductions in visceral fat are also linked with better insulin sensitivity, gait speed, and physical function. This is where most people get the morning wrong. They think the walk has to be long to matter. It does not. Longer weekly activity still matters overall. The CDC recommends at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity a week for adults 65 and older, plus muscle strengthening and balance work. But the post-breakfast walk has a different job. Its job is not to replace your whole exercise program. Its job is to shape the metabolic aftermath of breakfast. That is why a short walk can matter disproportionately when the timing is right. Now let's talk about the gut, because this is where the habit becomes even more interesting. Most people assume the gut wakes up when you drink coffee. Coffee can help some people, yes. But the deeper physiological story is that the gastrointestinal tract already runs on a circadian rhythm. Gut motility is low during the night, rises rapidly after awakening, and stays more active through the day. In other words, the body is already primed in the morning for movement in the bowel. That morning window is not random, it is built into normal physiology. Then breakfast adds the second trigger. When food enters the stomach, the gastrocolic reflex increases motility in the lower GI tract and helps move contents distally toward the rectum. That is why some people feel the urge to go after a meal, especially the first meal of the day. This is not imagination, it is a real reflex. The colon becomes more active in response to food entering the stomach, and that activity can create the urge to defecate. Now add walking on top of that. A 2025 study in healthy adults found that 20 minutes of walking increased bowel sound indices that are used as indirect markers of gut motility, with significant increases appearing within 1-2 minutes after exercise. That is the part that changed how I think about this entire routine, because now you are not relying on one signal. You are stacking 3: waking, eating and moving, circadian activation, gastrocolic reflex, physical motion-induced motility. If your digestion feels sluggish in the morning, that is the exact kind of stack you want. And this is why I think the post-breakfast walk works better for most people than the empty stomach morning walk. An empty stomach walk can still be useful, but if your goal is specifically to help both visceral fat biology and gut wake up, breakfast gives you leverage. The meal triggers the reflex. The walk then amplifies the movement response and smooths out the glucose curve. That is a more complete physiological intervention than just pacing around the block before your body has even had a reason to activate the colon. Here is the protocol I would actually use. Eat breakfast. Nothing huge. Nothing that leaves you heavy and sedated. Then within roughly 10 to 30 minutes, go for a brisk walk for 10 to 20 minutes. Not a stroll so slow that nothing changes. Not a power workout that feels punishing. Brisk enough that your body knows it is moving. Easy enough that you can repeat it tomorrow. The evidence on post-meal exercise suggests the closer you start to the meal, the stronger the acute glucose benefit tends to be. That last sentence matters more than people realize. Because after 50, consistency beats intensity far more often than intensity beats consistency. The best morning walk is not the perfect one. It is the one that actually becomes automatic. And walking is particularly strong here, because it is accessible. CDC guidance for older adults explicitly includes brisk walking as moderate intensity aerobic activity, and also emphasizes that some physical activity is better than none. Now I want to interrupt myself for one important caution. This habit helps. It does not replace everything else. If your belly fat is rising because you are sleeping badly, eating in a chronic surplus, lifting almost never, and sitting most of the day, then a 15-minute walk will not rescue the whole system by itself. And if your gut symptoms are driven by chronic constipation, IBS, pelvic floor dysfunction, medication side effects, or something structural, then walking may help the motility side without fixing the underlying disorder. This is a support tool, not a magic trick. But this is exactly why I still think it belongs in the conversation. Because it is one of the rare habits that is small enough to do daily, and broad enough to matter. It touches body composition, glucose control, physical function, and gut rhythm at the same time. And those systems do not live in separate rooms. They influence each other. Better movement improves glucose handling. Better glucose handling improves metabolic stress. Better morning motility can reduce that heavy, backed-up, slow-feeling start to the day. Do that repeatedly, and the body begins getting a different signal every morning than the old pattern of eat and sit. So what should you avoid? Do not turn this into an all-or-nothing rule. Missing one morning does not erase the benefit. Do not make breakfast so large that the walk feels unpleasant. Do not assume morning movement means checking a few steps in the kitchen. The point is purposeful walking. And do not use this as an excuse to ignore the bigger weekly target. The daily post-breakfast walk is the entry point. Your full program still needs aerobic volume, strength work, and balance work as you age. And here is the part I think most people will remember. If you are over 50 and your mornings currently look like this, wake up, eat, sit, feel heavy, feel puffy, feel slow, then you are training the exact state you say you do not want. But if your mornings become wake up, eat, walk, move the glucose, move the gut, move the day forward, that is a completely different biological message. Same breakfast, different aftermath. Same body, different signal. So here is the summary of what matters most. 1. The best fit morning habit for this title is a 10-20 minute brisk walk after breakfast. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is physiologically well targeted. 2. Visceral fat increases with age and is metabolically important, and exercise interventions in older adults can reduce visceral adipose tissue, especially when aerobic training is part of the plan. 3. Post-meal walking improves postprandial glucose handling, which is one of the cleanest mechanisms connecting a short breakfast walk to central fat risk reduction over time. 4. The gut is naturally more active after waking and after meals, and the gastrocolic reflex plus walking-induced motility makes the morning a smart time to support bowel movement and digestive rhythm. 5. This is not a miracle. It is a high-leverage daily habit that works best when repeated consistently and combined with a broader activity pattern appropriate for older adults